Hi. Well, welcome everybody. I'm so excited you're here. We're all here because we want to grow, we want to do better, be better. I am Sahava. For those of you who don't know me, I am the founder of IMMA Acupuncture and Wellness in Northbrook. We're an amazing acupuncture clinic specializes in chronic pain, women's health, anxiety, and depression. I've been seriously into the self improvement world, I'd say for about 14 years now. And I joke that I've read all the books so you don't have to. I'm really passionate about skill development, and I'm really excited to bring this class to you. I recently heard this quote from Jeff Bezos. Stress comes from not taking action over something you can have control over. We all live with this friction, the friction over us visioning the life that we want to have and then seeing that our actions don't move us towards what we want, right? So I want a peaceful home, but I don't regularly work on my anger or my patience. So I create kind of a tense atmosphere when my kids do something they're not supposed to. That's one example out of a million. And of course, I'm not talking about myself here. I'm not if I'm not beginning with the end result in mind, that peaceful environment that I truly want, I'm not going to align my words, actions, and behaviors accordingly. So this is kind of what causes us all of the stress and upset, right? So what we truly want, we're not aligning our actions with. I think most of us can relate to this, especially around eating. That's a great example, right? Some of us here value healthy eating because, we're supposed to. That's what our culture says. But others of us might hold nutrition like as a true, real, deep, like important value, right? But at night, yeah, we're sneaking around, in the pantry. I heard a really cute thing called nutrition by osmosis. So it's when, we work really hard to get healthy food on the table and maybe our family eats it, but we don't eat it because we were busy cooking, cleaning, prepping it, right? And so we think that we ate the broccoli, even though we made our kids eat the broccoli, but we didn't eat the broccoli, right? So we're not actually getting the nutrition. And so these all these little micro choices that lead to a lot of self-sabotage. And this creates a lot of unhappiness for us over time because there is this misalignment of actions and values. Or as Jeff Bezos says, right, this causes us stress because we're not taking action over something that we actually are in control of. The biggest changes happen in the micro steps, like those tiny, tiny mindset shifts that we make time and time again. So today, we are going to learn 3 new life skills that can help us align our actions and our values. And this is going to help us feel much more empowered. We don't have control over external circumstances. As much as we'd love to believe we have control, we only have control over ourselves. This class gives us a framework for dealing with these challenges and repeating negative patterns. So, this class is designed to show us that we already have all the power that we need. One thing I learned from working with various business coaches over the years while I was building is that most things in life are skills that can be mastered. When you understand that everything can be worked on and improved, you start to feel less stuck and less like a victim to your own life circumstances. I got really excited to work on this project that we're doing tonight. And then what happens? Life, right? We had a few conflicts at work that needed attention. I was having some brain fog. I had a hard time paying attention. I felt bloated. I felt stuck. I thought to myself, like, isn't this interesting, right? I'm putting together this class on empowerment and I'm kind of feeling sorry for myself right now. I'm in a bad mood. I don't feel good. I'm overwhelmed. And the reason I'm saying this is because this is real life, right? Skills are there to be practiced. We're not going to do them perfectly. And sometimes we won't even do them that well at all. But like anything, the more you do it, the more better you become at it, right? The more you're going to master it. And then it stops becoming so hard to practice and starts becoming more natural. So the skills we're going to learn today have become more natural to me over time, but there's still things I have to practice and work on. So skills are not all or nothing. They rest on a spectrum. So we can leave behind any idea of doing things right or wrong or perfect, right? Perfect is this false protection. It doesn't even exist. And we think it's giving us control. It's not. It's keeping us stuck, actually. Our first skill is self awareness. My favorite book is The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. He stresses the importance of self awareness. So, the ability to become aware and observe our thoughts instead of being constantly entangled in them. We all get stressed, but we each experience stress differently. Can anyone here tell me like where in the body they experience stress? You can write it in the chat or take yourself off mute. But usually, if we pay attention, we experience stress really physically.
I feel it kind of in my chest and sometimes my stomach. Like I just get this like nervous thing, almost like my heart beats fast,
Yeah.
like you're scared kind of, but it's just more like nerves.
Yes, definitely. So it's like when you feel nervous, you feel that physically, right? You can feel those nerves. So it's not just kind of how we're feeling emotionally, but it's manifesting physically, right? So that's a great example. Like very common places are jaw, shoulder tightness, solar plexus, like a knot in the stomach. Usually, when we have these physical symptoms, we feel the stress, but we're not observing the stress, right? We're busy being in it, but we don't stop to take ourselves out of it. So instead of saying, like, I'm so stressed, it can be helpful to reframe that as I'm experiencing stress, right? That's kind of a different feel to it. If you're basically, you're not the stress, is what we're trying to get at. So it's important to take more of a bird's eye view and see and observe like what's actually happening. So, how do I know I'm stressed? Well, I repeat the same symptoms over and over. I feel a knot in my stomach every time blank happens, right? Becoming an observer as opposed to an active participant makes a huge difference in shifting our problems. For me, I notice I often get this also kind of like what Nancy said, a chest tightness, like, but it's a little lower down in my solar plexus. And I started to pay attention, like, okay, when does this always happen to me? Because it's a familiar feeling. And what I discovered after paying attention and having this self awareness that it was basically any time I was having conflict in a relationship. So anytime I had to have a difficult conversation with someone or someone hurt my feelings or I felt hurt or something rubbed me the wrong way, I always kind of got this heavy icky feeling right here. So this is what I call a teaching symptom. It's a symptom that's there to teach me something. Listen to the difference of these own two self-talk statements, right? One is, I'm so mad at blank. She did this, she said that, right? Placing all this blame. I'm so pissed, right? Another one, if you would have some self awareness, would kind of more look like, I'm noticing I'm like, this is what for me, I'm noticing I'm experiencing some chest tightness here, which to me is a sign I'm struggling in a relationship. I know what this is. I've been here before. So instead of me being so entangled in the feelings and in the stress and in the upset, I'm kind of observing it from an outside view and saying, oh, okay, I know what this feeling is. Or when I'm nervous, this is how I get, right? So you start to become out of it, and that kind of helps you process and deal with it. So I want you to start noticing all of your repeating patterns. The clues as to what they are often found in the physical body. Our bodies are our teachers. So today we're going to recognize our thought patterns that keep on repeating over and over. So is this tied to something deeper? Yeah, it usually is, right? I'm going to give you a personal example that I'm going to come back to repeatedly throughout this whole class. So you'll kind of be able to see this arc using all three skills that we're going to focus in on today with this one example. And then we're going to see like how I'm taking this one example and shifting it through the use of these skills. So when I was young, right, I had learning disabilities. So there's this core belief for me that I'm not smart. I'm not a smart person. Some people are smart, some people aren't smart. So here's the pattern I noticed. Whenever I was trying something new or learning a new skill, I have this negative self talk that keeps happening over and over that I'm not smart. And when I start to think I'm not smart, it's because I've attached certain meaning to what being smart is. So for me, it's things come easily to smart people. So if I'm working really hard at something or I don't get it right away, I'm not smart. Now, of course, intellectually, I understand this is not correct. But the fear part of my brain, which is the amygdala, it's the fear part of our brains, is attached to these core beliefs because they're trying to protect, the amygdala is trying to protect us from being hurt. Because I'm aware of this pattern for me, instead of me going down the rabbit hole of not feeling smart and being upset, right? I just recognize it for what it is, a negative pattern that I have. I often try and attach even like a sense of humor to it, kind of like while I'm observing it, just going, oh, there I go again, like thinking I'm such an idiot, there I go again, like, that thinking I'm not good enough, right? So I start to make it separate from myself so I am not in it. Another practice, which is great from the work of Byron Katie, another really famous author, is asking yourself, is this true? Often the data that we're collecting does not match the analysis, right? The data does not show that I'm not smart. The data shows that I have a lot of strengths. Yet I'm collecting data and then I'm changing this analysis to fit my own fears. So I can feel like that's true, but it doesn't actually make it true. In the worksheet, we want you to distinguish like where these holding patterns are. What are the physical symptoms that you keep on repeating? And usually we'll start here and we'll look for deeper meaning. So I'm going to give you just two examples that we see in our clinic all the time. So in our clinic, we see a lot of women with shoulder pain constantly. And often we'll associate this with carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. So we'll kind of see when, especially when they're repeating with this chronic shoulder pain, is asking them questions like, what can you let go of? What have you been carrying that you are ready to let go of? Another example would be people who have chronic sore throats and chronic issues like in the neck or the throat. And so then we might pose the question like, what needs to be said that you feel like you don't have a voice for? So, of course, you can just have neck pain or a sore throat, and it could not be attached to our emotions for sure. But when we repeat the patterns that we're constantly getting sick in the same ways, usually there is a deeper meaning, and you can start to ask these deeper questions. And listen, if it's not on track, it's not on track. But why can't we use these things to learn a little bit about ourselves? Now, there's no point in making any of this hypothetical. Nothing changes if nothing's changing, right? So, can each and every one of us right now pick one thing to commit to changing? What's the first thing that comes to mind? What's that gut reaction when I ask you what negative pattern or thought or feeling or stressor you keep on repeating? Is there one thing in particular that if you changed, it would open a lot of space for you pretty much? It's like if I could change this one thing, like, oh, I feel like I have so much more space to breathe, you know? The next skill that would build on this would be self agency. Okay, so now that we've identified the trigger, the pattern, the cycle, we have the power to choose how to proceed, right? Like not taking things personally, right? I don't need to continue down painful thoughts or feelings. I can choose what to do with them. We all have upsetting things happen to us, but being upset is optional. And I'm going to say that one more time because I think that this is a game changer. Being upset is actually optional. Sometimes we can choose to be upset, and that can be completely appropriate, right? Grief, sadness, anger, those are all important emotions that have their place. But it's important to know that we do have a choice on how we want to proceed. Someone can speak disrespectfully to you, but that doesn't mean that you need to be disrespected. We don't need to be hurt. Being empowered is realizing that we have these choices for ourselves. There isn't a wrong or right choice. Honestly, I don't always make the right choice, even if I'm having self awareness. But having the self awareness and then making the choice of what you're going to do with it gives you the responsibility to deal with those consequences. We have agency over our own feelings and thoughts. We are not our thoughts. If you had a roommate that said everything to you that your thoughts would say to you, you would not trust that person. You would think they were insane. I've read so many personal development books, and every single book that I've probably ever read, no joke, references Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl created a logotherapy. It's a psychotherapy with the purpose of helping people find purpose and meaning in their lives. He was a Holocaust survivor and a psychologist. When he was in a concentration camp and living in the worst conditions possible, he realized that the one thing that nobody could take away from him was his thoughts, his sense of purpose, and his hope. Life can really suck. Like, I'm not saying that it's rainbows and butterflies. Like, life is hard, but we do have control over our own thoughts and feelings. And what is more empowering than that? Here's a really famous quote from him. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. So, understanding that you have choices gives us the freedom to be creative. When we realize that we're not as stuck as we thought we were, we can problem solve. Like I tell my kids, every problem has a solution. The disclaimer is that if you give them the wrong color sippy cup, they will murder you. Here's some of my favorite books on creativity. Okay. The Creative Way by Rick Ross is actually it's like a much newer book that's excellent. And I think it like just hit the New York Times bestseller list like the second it came out. He's a music producer and writes all about the power of creativity. There's the classic, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And like write in the chat if you guys have read these because I'm so curious. The Artist's Way is a book where she talks about this idea of creating what she calls morning pages. So it's basically a style in which you journal every morning and it awakens your creativity. My favorite book is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. These are all like great books if you do want to read about being more creative. Ideas are limitless, and a great mantra when you think of a good idea is there's more where that came from. Creativity empowers us because it allows us to think outside of the box, solve problems in innovative ways, and bring new, exciting ideas to life, fueling our personal growth and also collective success. So let's think back to the pattern we chose a few minutes ago, right? We all chose one pattern. This thought stress pattern has been such a major roadblock for you. So now that we understand that we have a choice to change it, how are we going to change it? Think creatively to shift this pattern. That can be physically trying to change the sensation you experience or emotionally trying to change your self-talk or feelings around this. So I'm going to go back to my initial example from the skill of self-awareness that I had mentioned, that a core belief for me from a very young age has been around not being smart. I'm highly sensitive around this belief, and the smallest comment or look for someone can make me feel like I'm like a fraud that's about to be found out. This has created a lot of stress and hypervigilance for me over the years. I've mastered the skill of self awareness around this, and I understand that this is a sensitive point for me. I go back to the Byron Katie question I had mentioned before. Is this true? I know that this is not true. But just because I know that, me telling myself it's not true isn't enough for me personally. It feels like I'm lying to myself. So, what I've done is I've replaced the thought with something that does feel very true to me. I tell myself, I may not be smart, but I am wise. To me, in my own twisted interpretation is that I'm street smart. Wisdom means street smart, right? So I know I'm scrappy. I know I'm ambitious. I know I can make do with any situation. And now that I'm aware of this negative self talk pattern, I comfort myself that I'm wise. And I tell myself, I have wisdom. And this feels very true and peaceful to me. So the second I can start to go down that I'm not smart rabbit hole, like I'm actually not that bothered by it anymore because I know that I'm wise. It kind of softens that harsher self talk and it breaks the pattern. And we're all going to break ours differently, but I'm just giving you a personal example to kind of fuel some ideas. But for every single person, this is going to look differently. We're all have very unique lives and situations, right? So, our final skill is having a growth mindset. So things happen to us, or some like to say things happen for us. We can't control the external world. We can't control what other people do or say, but we can control our attitude. We can choose to be stunted or not. Has anyone here heard of the term anti-fragility? What makes something fragile versus durable? The answer is how much stress it can withhold. Anti-fragility means that not only after a stress you come back to normal, but you actually become even stronger. So this is not resilience. Resilience is also a really important skill, but resilience is focusing on bouncing back after disruption. Anti-fragility focuses on gaining strength and improving from adversity. We always hear about PTSD. We always are talking about trauma, but has anyone here heard of PTG? So, PTG is post traumatic growth. And more often than not, people grow from their traumas. Tal Ben-Shahar is a Harvard professor on positive psychology, and he researched this, and it shows that even by knowing that PTG, post traumatic growth, exists, you're more likely to experience PTG than PTSD because you've already shifted to that growth mindset. So in our clinic, things happen and go wrong all of the time. And my general attitude is, yeah, we know for next time. Or, if there's a communication problem, I'm like, oh, okay, we'll know how to be a clearer communicator next time, right? I even keep a binder on my desk full of notes, that I use for running the business. And in there, I have a page called, and the title is Things I've Learned. And it's just a running list of all my mistakes and failures, pretty much, but also the lessons that I've learned and what I would do differently next time. So, kind of whenever something doesn't feel good to me, or not even if it doesn't feel good, if I have an aha moment, something I've learned, I actually jot it down and keep a record. And then at the end of the year, I have like a whole nice paper, right, full of all these things I've learned. So it's not a shame list, by the way. This is like my growth mindset list. You can really learn from anything. And a growth oriented person is always looking for opportunities to learn and become even better. So here's the tough question. How can we balance the potential unintended consequences of positive changes with the benefits they bring? And how do we prepare ourselves to handle these consequences effectively? So, this question gets us to really think about how we handle change. By looking at both the good stuff and the challenges, we can better manage the ups and downs of growth and make sure our efforts lead to longer lasting positive results. Positive changes, while beneficial, often come with their own set of challenges and unintended consequences. So, this paradox highlights the complexity of growth and transformation. For example, okay, implementing a new, more efficient process at work might increase productivity, but could also lead to initial confusion or resistance from other team members who are accustomed to the old way of doing things. If you're in the pattern of people pleasing, for example, you may not want to change or become a better team member out of fear of displeasing others. So you trying to be better and grow there can be negative consequences attached to that. Even if you continue to grow and change, you might not be as liked or you might have resistance, right? So those are things that can stop us from making these changes. For me, maybe I was using my own feelings around not being smart as a crutch in some way. That if I don't try, then I can't fail. Or if I don't fail, then people might think I'm smart, right? The narrative around not being smart was serving me in some kind of twisted way. And that brought up resistance for me to work on that part of myself. Again, our fears are from that amygdala, that primal part of the brain. They're there to protect us. There's almost a sense of grief that happens as we grow. We're losing a part of ourselves that served us in some way, even if it was a negative part of ourselves. That's like, even like an example is like me giving this class. Like, truly, I don't do a lot of classes like this, but I really wanted to challenge myself and grow in public speaking, in talking about things that are outside of acupuncture, right? Because normally when I give talks, it's always about Chinese medicine. And so I'm going outside of my own comfort zone today, and there's negative consequences, like what if no one shows up? Like what if it goes horribly? What if I make a fool out of myself? But I knowing those, and it's funny, it's almost like right before I turned on my camera, I felt a sense of embarrassment almost that I'm doing this. But knowing that, I'm like, well, I already knew that, right? I already had listed out, like I already kind of knew the process of being uncomfortable is normal, that it's the first time I'm doing something like this. This is against my edges of comfortability, which we're going to talk about. So it's like I already knew that these negative feelings are normal and part of it. And so I'm not freaked out. I just know it's part of it. Growth and change happen when we step out of our comfort zone, right? This is exactly what I was just saying. We actually need to push ourselves just barely touching the edge of discomfort because that's where our biggest potential lies. You know you're doing growth right, the right way, if you're slightly uncomfortable. So truly, even giving this class, like the fact that I am slightly uncomfortable is like such a good, powerful sign to me because I've done a lot of things out of my comfort zone before this, right? So I understand it's a part of me growing. Like I remember reading a book about the skill of setting boundaries. And I remember it said, I don't even remember what the book was, but it said, like, you're setting boundaries correctly if you want to throw up every time you set one. So this to me is like changing and growing. Like you want to throw up a little bit, right? You're a little bit uncomfortable and moving to the edges, like I say, for example, for people who are like afraid to use their voice, right? And afraid to say their opinions. Such a good exercise is to, like, when you're with a friend who's like a safe person for you to practice with, is like you saying something that it makes you feel a little uncomfortable, like raises your heart rate a little bit. And that takes you to the edges of your comfort zone. You're not saying something outlandish, but just something that a little bit, is a little bit out of character for you. Like that's where the growth really happens. So I want to kind of review the arc we just took because we just said a lot and just kind of go over the three skills so you can kind of see them all flow together. So, self awareness, we're going to start noticing our negative patterns. Pay attention to your body and its sensations. Pay attention to the words and phrases that you hear yourself saying over and over and over again. These are usually the areas where you're really stuck. Okay, I have a really silly example for this. When I was like in my 20s and all my friends were getting married, we were constantly attending weddings all the time. And I kind of noticed I was listening to myself talk at all of these weddings. And I noticed that part of my small talk would be about how it was cold in the room. Like I'd be like, oh, it's so cold. Oh, it's so cold, you know? And granted, wedding venues are cold, and I would always bring a sweater because I knew it was cold, right? So I literally had the solution sitting there. But I started to notice, like, oh my God, I'm like saying this a lot. Like I was like getting annoyed with myself that I keep on talking about how cold it is at these weddings. And I kind of realized when I had this self-awareness is that this was a way I was coping with feeling a little bit uncomfortable with small talk. And then I realized, wait a second, small talk is literally just a social skill that you can learn and improve upon and become better at it. So there was this kind of lower version of myself that was complaining a lot as a way to relate to people, and I didn't really love all the small talk. But then I worked on the skill of small talk and I got out of my comfort zone. I challenged myself, Sahava, like, do not say it's cold in this wedding hall. Do not say it's cold, you know? And that self-awareness helped me develop into being a person with stronger social skills. So that's like a silly example. Self agency. So now that we're aware that we're doing this, we have the power to choose what to do next. Like, I'm going to work on my social skills. You can manage your emotions. The next time you start to feel anything strong, remember that you are not that emotion. You are not that thought. You are not that feeling. You are you, and you are observing all of these things. State that your feelings are separate from yourself and then strategize on how to handle it. So there's no right or wrong here, but you are in control of your emotions and your thoughts. And the third is having a growth mindset. So now that you know the patterns where you're getting stuck, and I actually recommend like really like fleshing them out, like writing at least five, because we all have more than that. And now that you have the power to break free from these patterns, everything that you do moving forward is just an opportunity for growth. It's not so high stakes. Leading a more spiritual and meaningful life means that you make meaning out of life and all of its circumstances. We're meant to grow and develop. It's very easy for us that we judge children all the time on like the things they need to work on, like they're tantruming or they don't pay attention or they don't listen. But we don't hold ourselves to those same standards, right? Growth and development is not just for children, it's for us as well. But we do want to be gentle with ourselves. So this isn't all to like shame us and be hard on ourselves, but it's to have some softness with ourselves. So you can follow the handout or use some of these prompts if you're interested in going deeper and doing more reflective work to turn this into action. At the end of the day, it's so nice that we're having such a nice talk together, but we want things to be actionable. I know that everything I said is so much easier said than done, but I'm just reminding you they're just skills. They're just skills that you practice, and you don't need to be perfect about it.